Hello and welcome once again to the Dr. Zeero Free Magic Secret Show, where we investigate all forms of magic. And today, we're going to be continuing our discussion about chaos magic. Now, chaos magic is a certain form of philosophy towards magic that evolved and pretty much began in the 1970s. And there's a magician named Peter J. Carroll who wrote many of the foundational texts for all this. Now, the book I'm reading from is called Liber Chaos, K-A-O-S, which is one of the standard texts on chaos magic. And in this book, they detail 8 specific forms of magic that make up what is seen as the chaos sphere. It's a 8-pointed, it's like a circle with 8 points going out in 8 directions, all which denote, of course, the different kinds of magics associated with this philosophy. So I'm just going to read what he says about Octarine Magick, which is also considered pure magic in the scheme of the chaos sphere. And you guys can look deeper into the other 7 because it's an awful lot to relay, but I definitely wanted to do this one. So, Octarine Magick. Following Pratchett's hypothesis, the 8th color of the spectrum, which is the magician's personal perception of the color of magic, may be called octarine. For him, this is a particular shade of electric pinkish purple. He says that his most significant optical visions have all occurred in this hue, and he visualizes it to color many of his more important spells and sigils on the astral. He says that before I set sail in a handmade open boat through the Arabian Sea, I was tricked into accepting a huge and priceless star ruby by a wizard in India. It was of an exactly octarine hue. During the most violent typhoon he ever experienced, I found myself shrieking my conjurations to Thor and Poseidon while clinging to the bowsprit as mountainous waves smashed into the boat and octarine lightning bolts crashed into the sea all around. Looking back, it seemed marvelous that he and the crew had survived. He had kept the octarine stone, uncertain as to whether it was passed as a curse, a joke, a blessing, or a test, or all of these things. Other magicians perceive octarine in different ways. He says that my personal perception of octarine is probably a consequence of sex, purple, and anger, red, being my most effective forms of gnosis. Each of you should seek out the color of magic for yourself, which is kind of the point of chaos magic. It's kind of up in the air, you know. So, the octarine power is our instinctual drive towards magic, which, if allowed to flower, creates the magician self or personality in the psyche and an affinity with various magician god forms. The magician self varies naturally between magicians, but has the general characteristics of antinomianism and deviousness, with a predilection for manipulation and the bizarre. The antinomianism of the magician self arises partly from the general estrangement of our culture from magic. The magical self, therefore, tends to take an interest in everything that does not exist or should not exist, according to ordinary consensus reality. To the magician self, nothing is unnatural, a statement full of endless meanings. The deviousness of the magician self is a natural extension of the sleight of mind required to manipulate the unseen. The god forms of the octarine power are those which correspond most closely with the characteristics of the magician self, and are usually the magician's most important modes of possession for purely magical inspiration. Baphomet, Pan, Odin, Loki, Tiamat, Ptah, Iris, Hecate, Babylon, and Ishtar are examples of god forms which can be used in this way. Alternatively, the magician may wish to formulate a magician god form on a purely idiosyncratic basis, in which case the symbolism of the serpent and the planet Uranus often prove useful starting points. The magician can invoke such god forms for the illumination of various aspects of the magical self, and for various works of pure rather than applied magic. The category of pure magic includes such activities as the development of magical theories and philosophies, and magical training programs, the devising of symbolic systems for use in divination, spells, and incantations, and also the creation of magical languages for similar purposes. It is worth noting here that chaos magical languages are usually now written in V prime before transliteration into magical barbaric form. V prime or vernacular prime is simply your native tongue in which all use of all tenses of the verb to be is omitted in accordance with quantum metaphysics. All the nonsense of transcendentalism disappears quite naturally once this tactic is adopted. There is no being, all is doing. The Octarine power is invoked to inspire the magician self and to expand the magician's primary arcana. The primary personal arcana consists of the fundamental symbols with which you interpret and interact with reality, whatever that may assault perception as magically. These symbols may be theories or Kabbalahs, obsessions, magical weapons, astral or physical, or indeed anything that relates to the practice of magic generally, anything not dedicated specifically to one of those other powers of applied magic, whose symbols form the secondary personal arcana of magic. From the vantage point of the Octarine Gnosis, the magician self should be able to perceive the selves of the other 7 powers and be able to see their interrelationship within the total organism. Thus, the Octarine power brings some ability in psychiatry, which is the adjustment of the relationship between the selves in an organism. The basic difference between a magician and a civilian is that in the latter, the Octarine power is vestigial or undeveloped. The normal resting or neutral mode of a civilian corresponds to a mild expression of the yellow power that is regarded as normal personality or ego. The magician self, however, is fully aware that this is but one of 8 major tools that the organism possesses. Thus, in a sense, the normal personality of the magician is a tool of the magical self, and importantly, vice versa. This realization gives some advantage over ordinary people. However, the developing magical self will soon realize that it is not in itself superior to the other selves that the organism consists of, for there are many things they can do which it cannot. The development of the Octarine power through the philosophy and practice of magic tends to provide the magician with a second major center among the selves to complement the ego of the yellow power. The awakening of the Octarine power is sometimes known as being bitten by the serpent. Those who have been are usually as instantly recognizable to each other as, for example, 2 lifeboat survivors. Perhaps one of the greatest tricks of sleight of mind is to allow the magician self and the ego to dance together within the psyche without undue conflict. The magician who is unable to disguise him or herself as an ordinary person, or who is unable to act independently of his or her own ego, is no magician at all. Nevertheless, the growth of the Octarine, or 8th power of the self, and the discovery of the type of magician one wants to be, and the identification or synthesis of a god form to represent it, tend to create something of a mutant being, who has advanced into a paradigm that few others are aware of. It is not easy to turn back once the journey has begun, though quite a few have tried to abort the voyage with various narcotics, including mysticism. It is a pilgrimage to an unknown destination in which one awakes successively from one nightmare into another. Some of them appear vastly entertaining at the time. There are worlds within us. The abysses are just the initiations in between them. The evocation of an Octarine servitor can create an invaluable tool for those engaged in magical research. The main functions of such entities are usually to assist in the discovery of useful information and contacts. Negative results should not be ignored here. The complete failure of a well-prepared servitor to retrieve information about the hypothetical cosmic Big Bang was a contributory factor in the development of the Fiat-Knox theory, for example. So, that's just a quick run-through, if all that made sense to you, or if you want to learn more. Again, look into chaos magic and the book Liber Chaos, Liberkaos, by Peter J. Carroll. And for now, that is all on the Dr. Zeero Free Magic Secret Show. Thanks for stopping by. hit the subscribe button, let people know I exist, and here's a wonderful outro for all you peoples. Good night.